there's that meme of like the dude in like a wife beater and his boxers, like with a pizza on his stomach, like watching the Olympics, and somebody like trips and falls, and he's like, pathetic. Like, like it's just like one of those.
Exactly. Welcome to another episode of the Outcast Haven podcast. Jason is gone again this week, but we have another fill-in, so never fear. This week we are joined by the one, the only, Flake, who I hear in Ohio, someone mentioned you were Canadian. Is that correct?
At approximately at least a 15 to 20 per hour clip. Yes, I was reminded of my citizenship quite often.
All right. Well, don't worry. We're going to leave that alone, except for the part where you talk about yourself and give us a little background. As Minnesotans, we appreciate our neighbors to the north, so we won't mock you or berate you for being Canadian. We love you guys. You're like our favorite country other than America, and you're rising very quickly to being our favorite country. So we're the closest to you. It's not a long drive.
It's like the non-dysfunctional cousin at family get-togethers.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's the one that goes to college, right? And has like his PhD. Yeah, great.
Right.
Perfect.
We got our stuff together up here, right?
Mom and dad are brawling in the other room.
Yeah.
So, well, let's get started right out the gate with you. Let's talk about you first off. For anybody who doesn't know you, I mean, at this point, it's kind of hard in the Fab community not to know Flake. You do casting for everybody. You love to play the game. What else is there? Where did your TCG career start? What are you doing now? Like, tell us all about it.
Oh, well, if we're going to go way back machine, I mean, my foray into card games began 24 years ago when I began by playing Star Wars TCG, the old Decipher game. And it was merely the attractive element to it was frankly just Star Wars. And it was just another collectible piece of whatever. I'd seen Pokemon cards out there. I'd seen a lot of that stuff. But Star Wars was what appealed to me. The game mechanics were immensely complex, and I really enjoyed it. So playing that through high school, then after high school you go to college and all that other stuff, and it got a little bit, your life becomes life, and through university and all that, I would be more inclined to, I was pursuing more of a broadcasting career around that time. I was trying to be sort of push my foot through the door of like sports journalism and stuff. So card gaming was never really on the radar until a friend of mine introduced me to Hearthstone, and it sort of rekindled all that. And it's sort of been downhill from there. Flesh and Blood was just kind of haphazardly suggested to me. Again, I have seen so many card games rise and fall, this kind of flash in the pan kind of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And in all honesty, I was skeptical until I gave it a go and found that it was a lot more layered and a lot more complex than it is on the surface. So the trajectory of myself from, acne riddled teenager to where I am now started with Star Wars TCG ages ago, and I would probably estimate at least another 20 titles from there to where I am now. Just completely enamored with the game and just really committed to it.
So you immediately endeared yourself to us by saying Star Wars, because we actually all met playing Star Wars Destiny. I don't know if you ever played Star Wars Destiny.
Is that the dice rolling one?
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've never actually played it, but I've given it a look. But as soon as there was dice involved, I kind of
for us, we all overlooked it because it was Star Wars. Like that was like the thing that we all like consistency. We all like playing consistent decks, but we were willing to overlook the chaos energy of the dice because we so desperately loved Star Wars and just wanted to play collectible Star Wars game. So
fuck dice. Well, I hated that mechanic so much.
Yeah, there's a reason I don't play Rhinar. It's like it's just the way it is.
Oh my god.
Because, to quote Todd Flanders, dice are wicked. So I do not partake. That's just the worst thing ever. It's no thank you. No, not good.
Just the additional RNG on top of the already pre-existing RNG of a card game. It's like, why would I do that to myself?
Yeah. And then you're going to intimidate and just add layers to that, disappointment sandwich. Like, no,
do I pull the defense reaction? Did I not? That's what determines the game, not my skill.
No,
so
not for me. Not for me at all.
God, thank you. All my friends, all these guys are like, Reinhardt, he's great. He's great. I'm just like, no. But yeah, I appreciate some vindication here.
I mean, good Reinhardt players are great, right? Like they're still better. I mean, you deal with RNG, but you do a better job of fixing it than some people. I remember the first time I ever tried Reinhardt, and I was like, man, I don't get this deck at all. Like, I don't understand how, like, I keep missing random cards. It's like, no, you dumb. You don't automatically just pitch the blue card because it's blue. If you have a yellow card, but it's not a 6 power, you have to pitch that card so you don't just auto fail.
Right. Well, it's like controllable RNG. The best Reinhardt players will never leave it up to chance. However, I am far removed from being even an adequate Reinhardt player. I just leave that to better players than me. I've played ass loads of games against Reinhardt players, especially really good ones. And it is not the most pleasant experience. However, when you bump into a not so good Reinhardt player, feels great. Feels absolutely amazing. That is always the best, where they're like, well, I have a 1 in 3 chance of doing something good. I'm like, I like those odds. Let's roll the dice, baby.
Yeah, we're pretty blessed to have Cody.
Yeah.
In our local meta here, he plays with Tommy Fresh and a bunch of those guys too, and he's the Reinhardt truther, as we like to say. And he works with some Reinhardt, brute in general.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I actually. So Cody, funny enough, I made a deal with him last night. We played after we got done with locals, or we had our armory last night at the shop that I like to go to on Tuesday nights. And afterwards, one of the guys was like, "Hey, do you guys want to play UPF?" I don't typically play UPF. I love to play Kano, so that's kind of a recipe for disaster. Like when you sit down as a wizard player, everybody just looks at you and goes, "Look, we're not going to touch anybody else until that guy's dead."
Basically.
So
yeah.
So you get like 2 turns is typically all you get, and then they kill you. But last night, there was a strategic error. I sat next to Cody, and I said, "Cody, what if we leave each other alone? I'll leave you alone. Because once you empty your hand attacking someone else, I could just kill you. That's a potential. So what if we just don't touch each other, and at the end of the game, we play a gentleman's game? Just blitz, you versus me. We'll do it after everybody else dies." So all I had to worry about was Corey, who was sitting to my right. The guy next to Corey probably made the strategic error of the game when he said, he was playing Bravo, and he goes, "Corey, I'm attacking you to break my Goliath gauntlet. It's a crippling crush for 13 with dominate." And I thought, this is great. Like, Corey's going to go to like 10, and then he's in a no-win situation, because if he tries to attack me, I'll just kill him before he kills me, and then I get to draw my cards up, and we just keep playing this game. So Corey sat in fear and wouldn't attack me, and Cody I had an alliance with. And I was like, I just found the only potential winnable UPF game by a wizard in the history of Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, you're playing the real Game of Thrones over there, and that's kind of how that one went for sure. You just find that all the windows, all the avenues to victory were just, definitely one-way streets for you.
It was majestic.
So Matt, you've been doing tons of traveling, right? Like, I mean, we've seen you in New Jersey, Vegas. Like, of your travels so far, I'm really curious because admittedly, we don't engage with the community as much as you do. Like, you're always bouncing around and engaging with different people at all these events. I've been really curious, what have been your like top stories or memories from these events? Because I feel like you get a little bit more of a perspective on that than just like your average event goer, right? So would love to hear like whether it's like a little like dirt on James White or whatever it is,
Oh, I mean, I would, if there was dirt on James White, I would absolutely air that out for you guys. Unfortunately, for the clickbait of this podcast, there's no dirt honestly on him. And James and I have, I mean, like, it's weird to say, but like we've become friends, and it's just like, friends that you have, but you just like, you're busy, I'm busy, let's just like, reconvene down the road. James is somebody whom in New Jersey, a lot of the planning for New Jersey I was involved with part of it. Like, there wasn't going to be a Q&A with James. I was the one who suggested it and made that happen. I'm not trying to like pump my tires or take credit. I'm just kind of trying to paint a picture of how that sort of developed. James is not necessarily somebody who craves the spotlight, cares about the spotlight, or wants it necessarily. But he also is somebody who is very much out there to service the community as much as possible. His prime concern was to make sure that New Jersey was an experience for everybody, that they were going there and having a good time, and that there was a memorable experience from top to bottom. And he spent 6 hours a day signing autographs and taking pictures. And I had mentioned to him, I think on the Thursday after the Q&A, I said, hey, I don't know when your signing hours are. I don't think I'm going to have a chance, but if possible by the end of the weekend, I just have, a one card and a playmat. I would appreciate it if you signed. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And throughout the entire weekend, I saw that he was just constant, like a rock star. Like the dude was just basically, he's like Axl Rose at a rock concert, man. Like everybody just found him and went and wanted some time. And at the end of it, the last day, I was leaving the venue. I was just basically, I was waiting for an Uber with a couple people. I think I was with, who was I with? I might have been with it doesn't matter who I was with, but I was with a couple of people. We were literally just going to go grab a bite to eat somewhere. We were waiting for an Uber, and James is walking towards the hotel where we were both staying, and he points at me and he's like, you. And I was like, hey, James, what's up? How you feeling? And he's like, I ain't signing one more goddamn piece of anything until I sign your stuff. So he's like, where's your stuff? I said, it's in the hotel room. He's like, let's go. I'm like, well, this Uber is going to be pissed because it's around the corner, but we're going to the room. So we went back to the room and we spent a good solid 10 minutes just chatting, and he signed my stuff. But more than that, he asked me how the experience was. He asked me more so about me. We just chatted. Like we just sat on the couch and just, shot the breeze for a bit. I mean, just in terms of James White being like a solid dude, like there's no dirt on the dude. Like he said it himself. He's a gamer. Like his most important aspect is not squeezing money out of people. It's about making sure that people have a great experience overall. And you feel that. And I felt that. In terms of spicy stories, I mean, a lot of the spicy stories are usually not surrounding the actual events. It's usually all the periphery and the nonsense. I don't know what else I can kind of say without sort of betraying anyone's trust, but I mean, I'm by no means, like it sounds like we're just a bunch of casters. We're not like freaking Aerosmith, right? Like it's not like that's not what's going on. But we do get into some trouble, like, and we do have some fun. And the best part about it, for example, in Las Vegas, I mean, it's hard not to get in trouble if you're looking for it in Las Vegas. And I was getting invited to a whole bunch of places, and I did my best to go to as many cool, awesome spots with as many cool, awesome people. But there was one where it was like, all right, we ended up at Topgolf, and I ran up like a $600 bill, and like it was a little bit absurd, but man, was it memorable. It was a lot of fun. And that's a little element of it. And I will just say this. I was leaving. I gave myself an extra day. I gave myself the Monday to go home, and I gave myself Monday. I was flying home the Tuesday at noon or something. So I said, I'm here. Let's just enjoy myself. I just want to sit by a pool and relax. And Monday ended with a like solid 5 to 6 hour Pai Gow session where I was betting like $500 a hand. Not because I can afford it, but circumstances led to a scenario where that was basically the rest of the evening, and I will leave it at that. But it was certainly a solid trip. I will say that.
That's amazing.
I did come away even Steven, but gosh damn it, did I feel like a freaking baller for one night. I will say that.
That's amazing. God. And to be clear, I was more channeling like I watch a lot of your content, Flake, and I love your interview style and speed. So if you haven't, check out the Instant Speed podcast interview that Matt does with James White. But in that, you always got to do your little fish, right? Like, hey, James, give me, a hero, like a class. What's coming up? It's like, I'm just fishing. I don't think James has gotten dirt on him.
No, you have to. I mean,
he's got to fish. He's got to fish.
Well, if it's listen, you basically lead the breadcrumbs and hopefully that they enter the gingerbread house. But if they're not there, you kind of have to just point and say, "Go in. Are you going?" Or like, "Let's go." And if they just say no, they say no. But I mean, if it wasn't for that, in that interview, we would have never learned that the new set is called Dynasty, right? Like if I did not poke and prod James, and we have conversations prior to recording and post recording, and you know, and he tells me some of the stuff that's going to go down, and I can't tell people. Well, but in those conversations, he never told me that the new set was going to be called Dynasty, so I was kind of a little caught off guard in that regard. But again, I would not. Like I'm not a journalist. I'm not, and by any means am I out there trying to Larry King anybody into submission. But part of it is definitely that I'm trying to do a service to the community and be like, hey, we have James for an hour. Let's bring up as many concerns as possible. But also, you know, thanks for listening all the way up to where we are. Here's a little treat for you, which is at the end of the interview, people picked out the fact that the new set is called Dynasty. So I think that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Super enjoyable listen to. I love when you have James on.
I love it when I have James on. Definitely love it.
Yeah, he's got he has a good. You can tell that's not the thing he's focused on. Like a lot of people who run companies or a lot of people who are in charge of things, they kind of dig the spotlight. They like being able to talk about themselves. But the thing that always strikes me about him is no matter how much the questions, you can ask a question that should lead to him saying, well, yeah, and there's very little I in the way he talks. He tries to put a lot of the credit on other people. And that's always impressed me about him is it's not about James. It's about the game. And he's kind of, to your point, like those stories, listening to those stories of him, like, oh yeah, he stood around for 6 hours every day signing and taking pictures. That's just not his thing. And there was that picture of him on like Sunday where he was just sitting there and he looked exhausted. And you could just feel for the guy because you know that's not what he does. It's not what he craves. It doesn't like fill him with energy to be around that energy of like people just praising him. So he just looked like, okay, I'm tired, man. Like I'm so tired.
He was I mean, that was the Sunday, it was the finals. He had literally done Thursday's Q&A, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday all day long. And when I took that picture, I was like, my God, did I just take the last living picture of James White? Like just like as I thought he was gonna basically go full Obi-Wan on everybody and just disappear. I thought he was literally just gonna be robes by the end of it. And I was like, okay, it's possible. Nonetheless, that's just his jam. And like you said, it's there's very little I, and he mentions it all the time. And in you know that there are a lot of people at LSS that work exceptionally hard. It's not just him, and he wants to make sure that it's that the team gets the same recognition that he does. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of people out there that want the recognition. They want the spotlight. You know, like for instance, like Elon Musk is basically, he's a CEO of a company that wants to be, you know, freaking Hank Scorpio. Like he wants to be a social figure and whatever. And that's not James. James is like, nah, man. Like, and I think and again, I don't work for LSS. I don't have any of that. I get contracted to do their events, but from what I gather, it's like he has obviously the company's well-being and you know, financial success at heart, but he's also, the priority for James is to make the best possible event while still making a profit, right? So it's not about squeezing every last penny. It's about making sure that they can remain profitable while creating events where people are like, God damn, when's the next one? And I think that even in Ohio, which I was at, that wasn't an LSS sanctioned event, but just the game itself has created this environment where I am in a car for 8 hours driving, you know, through a random states, like eating stale Taco Bell to just get to a place where I can once again either cast the game or sit across from a table or sit at a table across from somebody and draft it, like, or play it or whatever. Like that's what gets me out of bed. That's what gets me across the border. That's what gets me traveling, is this game. So and I appreciate it very much.
I think one of the things that goes along with that is something that I actually want to get into, which is the fact that so far the game has been pretty well managed. I know we've had some, you know, people will perceive like Starvo as like a dead meta sometimes, where it's like it was just that deck, but it created, like, it forced a lot of innovation and stuff. And now that we're getting ready to go into Uprising, I know you guys up north have access to Uprising, correct?
That's correct.
So yeah, we've been, so horribly punished here in the United States. I've read Facebook, I've seen some of the Twitter comments. It has been insufferable. We are behind. Like, we're basically losing the race. We're never going to win an event again because we're going to get Uprising a week late. So it's like we can't draft it. Therefore, we will never win another event.
It's over.
What do you think? I know one of the things that I appreciate about you is you're very active on Twitter, which we've recently joined Twitter, maybe a month and a half ago, and have found that Fab Twitter is definitely the better space. Fab Facebook is rough sometimes. Fab Twitter is pretty great, but sometimes people can, they'll still say what they think, and you're just like, come on, man. What do you think so far of, like, I find it as a necessary complaint. Like, people have complained a lot about the quote unquote like distribution failure, or, man, if this is Fab 2.0, what can we expect? Because it's a week, which is just shocking to me that people are actually this bothered by it.
Well, here's the deal. And this is the one thing that I have always been very vocal about, is the fact that people sometimes don't know what the F they're talking about. It's just a fact. And I don't take any stock in it, and nor do I hold anyone really accountable. But, like, people have a right to be disappointed. Do they have a right to be outraged? I don't think so. I mean, but then again, there's an outlet, and, like, I carved my career in a game called Gwent. I casted that game for 4 years, 5 years. I've been part of it for that long. Since 2018, I've been casting matches for Gwent's major tournaments. I don't think there's any. I mean, I've been around other Reddits and other Facebooks and groups and whatever. I have never seen a group more upset about everything all the time than Gwent Reddit, and I've honestly just been. It's a matter of, like, okay, cool. Like, how does that affect me? It doesn't. I don't care, because eventually something's going to change or something's going to happen, and you'll be pissed off about something else. And you'll realize that this is actually irrelevant. I'm just surprised it's not meta complaining. But the thing about distribution is, like, let's just get real here. What the hell were they supposed to do? Like, if people are under the impression that okay, so we have Uprising. People think that people are still at the design table creating Dynasty. Dynasty has been printed already. Like, that stuff is already printed and in boxes.
At least sent, yeah.
Correct. People don't get that. So people are like, well, how did you, like, Uprising's out and these are strong. Why are there no answers to it in Dynasty? Because Dynasty was sent to the printers before Uprising was even probably announced. Like, it's just you know what they're designing right now? They're designing cards for late 2023. That's what they're doing. And how do I know this? Because I know some of the designers who are designing the cards, and that's just the fact of the matter. And so when people are pissed off about this kind of thing, like, you have to understand as well that there are, when you're planning for these things, they plan for worst case scenarios. But sometimes what you're planning for is not, like, you're not planning for 9 of the 10 or 10 of the 10 dominoes to go haywire. Yeah. You're planning for, like, 7 of the 10 dominoes to not fall. And then if there's 3 still standing, we still have a chance here. Like, we could still make deadline. Yeah. But when 8 of the 10 go haywire, that's when there's a week delay. Frankly, it's just a week. That's not bad. Can you believe that? That, like, legitimately, the freaking boat, like, I know this sounds ridiculous. I was gonna say the boat blew a tire, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, the truck blew a tire, and it took, like, a few days to get it fixed, and it's still on the way. It's not like we're delaying this until August. We're delaying it until whatever. 1 week. And if you want to be upset about that, it's distribution to one country. So get over yourselves, America. I hate to say this, but holy Moses, as a Canadian who has been dealing with, like, the fact that, like, you're not. I'm in Canada. I got mine. Europe's got theirs. It's a you problem. No offense. It's a you problem. And that's all it is. So where's the outrage? I'm not outraged. And I get it. Yeah, you're not outraged because you got your cards. You know what? I could deal with a week delay. Not only that, but you guys get way more freaking boxes than everyone else in the world.
Yeah,
no offense.
Yeah.
So is it justified? I
No.
understand when people are disappointed, dude. I would be absolutely over the moon pissed off if I was just looking forward to opening cards, and I still am. And I have a case that is waiting for me. I have not been able to get it because I was in Ohio, so I'm delayed a week. Whose fault is that? It's my own freaking fault. I get it, but that's just the fact of the matter. I can be patient and wait a freaking week. I'm gonna open my cards the same time as all you guys in America.
That? What is that though? That was a P word that you used. I don't know what that is. What is?
Which one was it?
Patience, passions.
Oh,
something like that. Yeah.
Look,
what's that? We don't use that word here.
Yeah, I've been dealing with internet outrage for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part about it is that it's, again, I've said this before, the negativity on the internet, it's 10% of the noise at 200% of the volume. That's basically what it is, because everybody who's just going on with their lives are going on with their lives. And that's just the way it is. And I get that people are upset, but what was LSS supposed to do? You think LSS was just like, okay, so this needs to be in America on June 24th, so we'll load the truck on June 22nd and cross our fingers? No, they sent this stuff months ago, and there's problems because it's not just them. There's paper supply issues, there's distribution issues, that the whole supply chain is like concocted. So what are you supposed to do? Be pissed off. That's because that's the only thing that people can rely on to make themselves.
That's how you feel better.
And I can be okay with that. I'm all right with that. But don't sling mud when it's nobody's freaking fault.
It's just throwing shit everywhere. I've got a couple things. Sorry, I got a couple things I want to put in context too, as asides to Matt's points, because I don't remember where I read it, or maybe I listened to it. Maybe it was one of the James interviews or something. But when Starvo was being tested, Seed's chain was still a thing. Like, if that helps anyone put stuff into context.
And non-errata Briar.
Yes. Like those were the heroes that they were testing the Starvo against.
That came out at the Q&A in New Jersey. Somebody legit said, sorry, what? So to remove the veil a little bit, when we opened that up, I basically said, is there anything that you want to talk about that if it doesn't get asked, I will ask it? He said, just lead off and to ask about Starvo, because everybody obviously is over.
Address it right away.
And that's what I said. I said, so I'm like, I'll do it in a funny way. So that's when I said, all right, James, Starvo, what the hell were you thinking? And that's when he went into the context of it. So put this in perspective, people. You want to talk about timelines? Starvo was already a thing when Seed's chain was still around. So you're testing Starvo against arguably one of the best decks that has ever existed in Flesh and Blood, and Briar, which is probably one of the best aggressive decks that have ever existed as well. So
just think, how far back do you remember how far back Seed's chain was? That was precisely. Like, that feels like 4 years ago. Like,
because if you had Errata Briar and beaten the living garbage out of Starvo, then when they do attack you with like one of their big, hits, like when they do fuse and beat the crap out of you, you know what you're doing? You're basically blocking for 6 with like a nimblism, and you're like, okay, and your equipment, and you feel better, and then you're going to go ahead and convert for another 20 damage because they want to hold all 3 elements in their hand. So but people do not have the foresight or the retrospective on how things work. All they see is what's right in front of their eyes, which is, I have played against Starvo in this ProQuest season.
Is hard. No,
but I totally get that.
I do get it. I get it as well. But
it is absolutely frustrating. But people need to also be able to have at least do the homework and understand a little bit about it. And it's not out there, but it's not like it's people understand how this process works. But like, if you just maybe give it a half thought, you'll realize that when there's a week delay on a item, it's not because they were like, oh crap, FedEx is closed tonight, so we're screwed. Like, that's not how that works.
Forgot to drop it off Friday. Damn.
No. I think the thing that blows my mind about the complaining with like the delay is that LSS is very open and honest. Like that's one of the things that endears me to them as a company so much, is that a lot of companies just, something goes wrong, they just don't say anything. I harken back to maybe the greatest failure in a company's history ever when it came to releasing a set. Star Wars Destiny had a set that failed to get released on time. It was months late because somebody was responsible for hitting send on the email to finalize the print. He didn't do it. Then they went on vacation. They got back 2 weeks later and they said, oh no, the email didn't send. They never told anybody what happened. They never said anything to anybody. They waited, again, timelines, right? This was 9 months before the set would have released. They could have just moved the timeline at the point. They just left it where it was. They said nothing to anybody. And then like a month out, they're like, oh, by the way, the set's delayed 3 months. So
to be fair though, that's probably one I wouldn't tell people either. If it was
right. You don't, you don't tell them why. I'm just saying they could have easily
at
said,
that
like,
point
hey, we had
been
an
like,
issue. Like we're pushing the set 3 months. We had some delays. You don't have to tell them that like Jeff forgot to hit send on an email.
But let them know the delays there. Yeah.
Let them know there's a delay. Like just be honest. And like so far, that's the thing, is like LSS is so forthright about it. And they said, look, we understand distribution isn't perfect. We get that. We're trying to resolve those issues. We're going to have a direct hand in it. Like James pointed out, that they're going to be more involved with the distribution process of making sure the right stores get the product. Because as of right now, like when you give distribution like the full free reign to do whatever they want, LSS can be like, hey, we would like these stores to get the most product, but it's kind of up to you. You don't give them a lot of guidelines. Obviously, the distributors are going to give the most product to the stores that buy the most stuff. Not the most flesh and blood, the most stuff from them. They don't care about the flesh and blood. They care about their pockets and their bottom line. I get that. Like that's what companies do. So LSS has said, hey, we're stepping in. So again, to be like critical of Uprising not being a perfect release when LSS has said simultaneous to the release, hey, we're trying to fix it. We can't do it this set. It's too late. Everything has been allocated. We can't touch this set. We're going to fix it next set. And people are like, okay, but I'm mad about this set. It's like, okay, we acknowledge that you're mad. We acknowledge that it wasn't perfect. We're going to fix it next time. It's like, okay, cool. But I'm mad about this set. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well,
that was actually, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just about to say, and that's the fact of the matter is that at a certain point, it's just, I don't want to say it's fashionable to be upset about things, but it's easier. It's absolutely easier. Yeah. And I get it. And like the fact is that, okay, you're mad. It has been acknowledged. It is in the process of being improved upon and rectified. What else can we do? Well, like you mentioned, but I still kind of want to feel justified, because that if I bitch about something, and even if I get a response, and even if there's a solution coming around the corner, I'm not gonna have the same interaction. I'm not gonna garner the same. And again, people are probably gonna call me, oh, you're such a simp for the company and this and that.
They've earned my simphood though.
Compared
to other companies that I've had to deal with in my TCG past, and I know in Blake's TCG past, like they have given me enough of a view into how they operate and what they prioritize, where it's like, I don't know technically the definition of simping, but it sounds like something I am for them. So like, let's do it. Like,
in the same regard, I mean, I'll basically just refer you to the other interviews I've done with James White, where I'm like, yo, this is not working. This sucks. This is wrong. Like, what are you doing? And then he'll answer. And then that's it. Then the answer is out there.
Yeah.
And the outrage, it's not even outrage. It's just
never have I ever had a company be so forthright with their information.
Yeah.
We're the first podcast to like go after things, right? Like we absolutely 100% have zero issues saying, like, calling a spade. We're gonna say what we think. We're gonna be honest.
We were not popular at the beginning because like there were issues. Like I mean, outside of like, I don't know, maybe Nick Butcher and some of our Australian friends, like there were not a lot of fans of ours because we would call their baby ugly when they had zero organized play. They had zero. It's like all this stuff where it's like, this is where you need to start building, and it didn't exist, and there was no word of it existing, and we were just pushing for not to pat ourselves on the back saying like we did this. That's not what I'm saying, but we're not like blind,
but in the same vein, it's like can you really, it's like can you really just kind of criticize the 5-year-old for losing the foot race against the adult? They're still growing and gaining their legs in that regard. So it's hard to be like, well, you don't have all this stuff. Well, the dudes like LSS at a certain point was still in the 101 classes of how to develop this kind of stuff. And when you already have completed all the advanced stuff and are out there, it's like it's I can see, like, I've always been a proponent of just fair assessment of things that are out there. If something's wrong, it's fine to discuss, but at a certain point you got to take it from a constructive angle.
Always
in
constructive.
Terms of that.
There's
nothing wrong. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with calling, like you said, calling a spade a spade. If something is not correct and something, it's fine to harbor a discussion about it. But just like anytime something goes wrong, it's I've been dealing with this is an absolute chart topping hit forever in Gwent, which was the Gwent's been around since 2016. I've been playing it, I think, since 2016. I've been hearing that it's a dead game since 2017. And I'm like, oh, well, amazing. I can't believe I've made a career off of a dead game for 5 years. Like, amazing. And you're still here. Good for you. You're also still here beating that drum. But the thing about it is that these dead game sort of doomsayers are the type where it's kind of like, if you're watching a baseball game and you're just like, next pitch, home run, but nothing happens, no one's going to give a S about it, right? No one's going to give a crap about it. But the second that you're right, people are like, oh man, this guy knows what the hell he's talking about. And you feel like an absolute god. But imagine the amount of times that you whiff on that. Like, just imagine how many times people say that. So if you just go ahead and sprinkle that dead game or like dying game or whatever across every single platform and every single scenario, maybe at one point you'll be right. Like the dude who's just like, well, it's a MetaZoo or this or that or Artifact or whatever. I've across so many different games. Eventually you'll be right. But until then, you look like a clown.
Yeah.
I always tell people, when you're playing basketball, every time you shoot a jump shot, you just say buckets. Because if you miss it, everybody's just like, he missed it. What an idiot. And they just move on because you missed the shot. Nobody remembers the missed shot. But if you just shoot the shot, you go buckets, and it goes in, people are like, my God. Remember when that dude hit that like 3 from like 10 feet past the line, and it was just buckets, turned around and ran away, and it went in? What a god.
I love how you're giving the total flip side of the coin. We're like, this is why it's good. And Matt's like, this is why this is stupid.
Hey.
No, but I get it.
No. Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Everybody who says it, you're saying it in hopes that you're right. But that's the thing, is you're trying to be right about something dumb. But then, like, right to your point, I think the trick is it's okay to be critical. That we've said that from the beginning. We're critical, but it's because we care. Like, I want the game to succeed. So when something isn't good, I'm going to say something in hopes that, you know what? I get it. I don't have the biggest voice. We're not the biggest podcast. We don't have the biggest listener base. But we understand that LSS cares very deeply about the game. They do pay attention to a lot of podcasts. They listen to a lot of content, clearly in the office, because that stuff gets filtered through, and it's been referenced before. We've gotten things or notes and stuff that have referenced things that's like, okay, they actually pay attention. It's like, if you have a platform to do it, you should feel a little bit of an obligation to do something, whether that's, to your point, getting a chance to interview James and asking certain questions like, hey, the community wants to know this. This is my platform. I'm going to ask the questions for the community because I have a voice and an opportunity to do it. And we've always said, we made a point. One of the things that I think happened this week that was really great and that they did was their change to the policy and procedures. And I think a lot of people, there was an outcry after some of these events where it's like, come on, man, like a curled card, like you're DQing whole teams from Vegas or people from tournaments over a card that you deem too curled, but you can't prove any more than anybody else that it is or isn't marked.
Which I would like to caveat quickly that in that podcast where we were bitching about that, we got lots of comments on that one. we were attacking the policy. I mean, maybe Jason was going after the judges because he likes to do that. But generally speaking, we were more confronting the issues with the policy and how the policy didn't leave room for judges' discretion, which is not, if it, like, judges for good reason are probably more comfortable following by the book, which is understandable. So an adjustment to the policy made sense. And the way that that was handled is just another feather in the cap for reasons that I trust LSS to make the right calls on things. But before I forget, again, I've thought this 3 times now and I keep losing it and then remembering it again. But a little like advice to people locally, because no one likes that person at the local shop that is just a fucking whiner, right? Just be cognizant of how you're complaining, right? That's huge. Because to Matt's point, to Blake's point, talking about putting a little thought behind the issues that you're seeing. Like if me hearing someone complaining goes one of 2 ways. Either I hear that you are complaining about the actual problem and proposing some sort of solution or how you think it should be. That is one path. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to have a discussion with this person then if it comes up, because they seem like they've put thought and are rational about what they see as an issue. And maybe they've seen something that's not accurate, or you can have that back and forth and inform them that, oh, LSS actually addressed this already, or something like that comes up. But if you're just like bitching like, wah, 1 week late, like this is bullshit, it's like, that's not constructive in any way and not going to create a dialogue. There's nothing to engage with there. You're just that guy in the shop. So just be cognizant of that, because I know that there's people out there that don't have time to put a bunch of research in and stuff, and they might just go to the shop and bitch. I'm just telling you, don't do that, because that makes you that guy.
Yeah. It's easy to be like, I get that some people, they had vacation plans this weekend and they were excited to open Uprising last weekend, go on vacation this weekend and not think about it. And now for them, it's 2 weeks delayed. But again, it's just 2 weeks, not the end of the world. It's still going to be there when you get back. But at the same time, I do get it. It is disappointing. Everyone's excited for Uprising. We're ready for a new set. It feels like it's a brand new world. I think that's the biggest thing. Is I feel like Uprising is a set that everyone is hoping is a breath of fresh air, because we haven't had things that can't be solved. Our windows, I think, sometimes have been a little too short to solve them. And then at the last minute, somebody solves it, and then the meta has changed. Like Siege Chain, everything was like, God, this deck is awful. And then Bravos and even Prisms were starting to solve that matchup, and then the meta shifted. And then Briar comes in, and she was a bully, and people were like, well, Ice Lexi and Bravo again can kind of come in, Oldham. Like, here's some solutions, and then the meta shifted.
Briar was right there. Dude, Briar was like almost like we were another 2 weeks solved, and that's not an issue. But
yeah, and I think that Starvo was the first time in this game that we've actually felt a sense of hopelessness, where it's like, I don't think we can fix this. I think this is a problem that is unsolvable on a meta level. We can't resolve the issue at hand, and I think Uprising is just, it's exciting to play, because it's like, I think this is going to be a breath of fresh air, and people are just ready to go.
But if I may interject, this Starvo was absolutely problematic. And based on the testing that was done, the testing environment and the actual meta environment were 2 different things, which is, again, you can't necessarily plan for that, and it's tough, but it is what it is. That said, Starvo was released on February 4th.
Oh yeah.
It had a chance to be banned 3 months later. Is 3 months. I have played card games where I have slogged through
7,
Control Priest or
8,
Wallet Warrior or whatever other Hearthstone stuff, or in Gwent or in Magic, in Runeterra. I have slogged through the most awful metas for like 8 months. 3 months. Living Legend did what it meant to do, and the fact that it was at ProQuest or at Pro Tour was off the fact that it literally just ducked under the Living Legend status by like one dude out there decided that they were going to beat Starvo in a final, and that's the problem. So look, the fact is that if it was just there, like it was almost there, it was like an unfortunate situation where had it won like one more tournament, it would have actually hit Living Legend, and it wouldn't have been at Pro Tour. So the complaints about the card being super strong, oppressive, meta defining are accurate. They're absolutely justified. The problem is that they also overlook the fact that Living Legend status took care of it. It did.
Mhm.
It did. It missed it by like it literally missed the bus by like a freaking a hop and a skip, and that's unfortunate for ProQuest or for Pro Tour because you had to go ahead and go through a Starvo meta again. Starvo didn't win, FYI. That said, there needs to be, when you're criticizing an element of like this card is busted. Okay, let's get a bigger picture of what's going on.
Take
Step back
one
and
step
understand.
back.
Yeah,
Get a broader
the
view.
information's out there. All right, it was tested amidst a different environment. Things have changed. Sure, no problem. All right, it's still busted. That doesn't fix the fact that it's still busted. You're right. It's still busted. So let's get it to Living Legend and then have the rules and the contingencies and the safety nets in place to deal with it. Are they perfect? No, but it did catch it because Uprising came out and now Starvo's no longer a thing. So
Yeah.
we dealt with it for 6 months, which in my opinion is a long time. Don't get me wrong, but it could have been like 3. Could have been 3. And you know, is getting rid of a super strong card in 6 months enough? Is that too slow? I mean, how long did Briar survive before it got errated? Like 3 months?
Yeah, it was.
I think.
Like, honestly,
Yeah.
I think it was like,
Yeah.
like less than 9 weeks. No,
Yeah, something like that. It was about 2 to 3 months before it
10
got
weeks.
clipped, and understandably so as well. But it was going to hit Living Legend, and this is a discussion I had with James back in January, where I said, I'm like, if you keep clipping cards, then what is Living Legend for? And I don't mean that to criticize either bans and erratas or Living Legend. I just mean that how can you have both, where you're basically clipping the wings of something that's going to be, you know, flying all the way to the sun? Don't you want its wings to get singed by flying, soaring that high, or do you need to intervene and give it a little less altitude and sort of throttle back on it and let it go there a little bit more naturally? It's a tough balance. It certainly is. Yeah. But again, the fact that people pick out one element and harp on it can be exhausting at times, and that's an easy way to just go tone deaf to that kind of things. But I will also say that the vast majority of the criticism space amidst the game has been very constructive. It's been very rational. It's been very dialogue and discussion driven. It hasn't just been people saying this sucks. Why does it suck? Because it sucks. And I've dealt with those those kinds of conversations, you know.
Everything across the board, like, because we had, so on our big game prior to this, we got together with Star Wars Destiny, but DBS, like Dragon Ball Super, was like another game that we actually did a bunch of content for at the beginning of our channel when we were kind of split in time between that. And that was Flesh and Blood had just been like newly released in the States. Team Covenant had just been shipping out like Arcane and stuff. And like that community, on the heels of Star Wars Destiny giving very little communication from the company, the community of DBS I didn't care for at all. It was very attacking and aggressive, and, you know, like not really a lot of constructive criticism happening, just criticism. But the community in Flesh and Blood, I think, has been great from the beginning. You know, it's got ebbs and flows, but I'm curious, how would you break down your percentage, Matt, of like time and investment spent on Twitter versus Facebook versus, like, how do you spend, like, if you're like, I got 15 minutes here as a break in my day, I'm gonna hit up Twitter, Facebook? Where do you go for like your content?
Yeah, so this is gonna sound absolutely terrible. Most of my day is spent on this, mainly because it's an outlet for marketing, and it's an outlet to stay connected to the community and to understand what's going on, because it's the nature of what I do for a living. You know, I gave up a really sweet career to follow, quote unquote, follow your dreams kind of thing. You know, I basically worked my ass off in so many different ways, shapes, and forms so that I had at least a fallback plan, a little bit of a financial cushion so that I can pursue content creation full time. So when doing that, what I learned was streaming on Twitch is like the absolute worst way to actually create any kind of opportunity. You know, there's so much, you make no money doing it, and there's so much competition and whatever it is, and it's, so what I learned was interacting with the community and networking was one of the absolute best ways to develop a reputation, to market yourself and whatnot. So frankly, the majority of my day is having Twitter open to just understand what the constant climate and the shift and, like you said, the ebbs and flows of what the community consensus is on various discussion points, be it Uprising's release, what's going on, distribution issues, what's going on, cards, reveals, learning that, hey, it's not just the 4 heroes that they released that are getting the Marvel treatment in the history pack. Someone just pulled a full art cold foil Viserai. So it's like, well, I would never have known if I wasn't tuned in. And these are all discussion points because of situations where my whole life is content creation. I need to make sure that if I'm on this podcast, I was on Fresh and Bud's podcast earlier today. I recorded another podcast of my own earlier today. Like, I need to be on all this. It's very exhausting, don't get me wrong. But like, everybody's job is exhausting. Like, everybody has a day job, or not everybody, but like, people have day jobs, people have responsibilities. This happens to be mine, and it is immensely mentally taxing at times to just constantly be amidst this. It's like being within a bell that's being constantly rung. Like, you don't notice it after a while until the silence comes and you're like, man, this is beautiful. Like, this is just good. So it's a fine balance, but it's just you just have to sort of live within the noise in order to just make sure that you're kind of already on it. So a percentage, I can't really give you a percentage, because to me it's just part of what I do. It's part of the business.
I gotcha. I only ask because we have made a pretty drastic shift from engaging on Facebook to engaging on Twitter. And we tout that on our podcast and let people know that we've done a pretty big shift over there. Because I don't really, like, I'll check and I'll do like you said, like a quick temp check on Facebook, see what's happening, if anything interesting's popping off over there. But Facebook, just, you get more of that echo chamber effect, I feel like, on Facebook. And Twitter is a lot more of like meaningful engagement from what I've seen. And maybe it's just the people I'm following. Maybe it's that selector that exists in Twitter allows you to engage with what you want to engage with. But Twitter seems to be such a more valuable engagement experience almost across the board. So I was just curious if you'd seen the same thing.
Well, Facebook in general is something that I typically like to avoid. It's not something that I'm very much spending too much time in, and nothing against the people who use it, but I mean, there was a period, again, like, there's no escaping it. I'm Canadian, but the U.S. news cycle is just basically force fed down our throats all the time, and
I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all good. But I mean, like, let's get real. Like, 2015 upwards seemed to be this gigantic, clown show of misinformation and whatever. And I'm just like, I'm not here. Like, it's so easy to get caught up in arguments. And I'm like, I have a better use of my time. You're entitled to your opinion. Do it. I don't have to listen to it. It's perfectly fine. You live your happy life. I'll live mine. My interactions with the Facebook community have been very positive. And partially because, maybe part of it is because I pick and choose the conversations that I want to have. I have had, I wouldn't call them arguments, but I've had, debates, a difference of opinions when it comes to certain things. For example, when I was having James White on the podcast, I put it out there on Facebook, said, hey, if anybody has any questions, for James or concerns, please leave them here, and I will get the main ones, and I'll make sure that you're best represented. And somebody wanted me to ask them about some sort of controversy involving one content creator and LSS. And I said, I don't know anything about this. I'm not going to waste James's time asking him a question about one individual when there's millions more. I say millions. I mean, I'm not that, but you know what I mean? There's
when my
so many
3 billion followers want to know something. Yeah. No, I get you.
I just want
to get him out.
Yeah. And I'm like, I want to make sure that the best situations, and there was back and forth on that, but it was, in my opinion, it was very cordial and it was very appropriate. And I know that that's definitely not always the case, but I typically stay off of Facebook for the most part, purely because I just do not believe in Facebook's philosophy, and I know that that's going to sound very hypocritical given the fact that I'm on there, but it's something that I'm not. I'm the vast majority. I'd say 95% of my attention is on Discord and Twitter. Those are the outlets where I'm most engaged in. And Reddit, it fits in there, but even Reddit, I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah.
I always tell people I'm only on Facebook for one reason. It's because their messenger system is better than being in a group message with people on Androids and people on iPhones. It's the one reason that I use, because I hate messaging people with like cross-platform text messaging. But Facebook Messenger is just the most convenient. It's just...
Yeah, well, if I just randomly got rid of like my Facebook Messenger, like how is my aunt going to send me minion memes and gifs and stuff like that and tell me that it's a blessed day like every single time or whatever? I'm like, I love it. It's like, it's how I keep in touch with people, but there's by no means any. I think I believe I make one post a year annually on the same day, which is I think it's April 30th. I always post the same All-Star Hall of Fame meme of Justin Timberlake's face, and it says it's going to be May. That's the only thing. Nice. If you go to my Facebook page, I maybe every 6 months I'll post something else, but that is a Flake guarantee that every single year on April 30th, I just repost that meme and I write annual contribution to Facebook. I'm alive. Here it is, bam, and that's it. And then that's all I do. And like I go and peruse the Flesh and Blood fan page or whatever it is on Facebook, but I don't necessarily engage in conversations or anything. I just, like, again, it's a barometer for what the concerns are, because myself as somebody who likes to discuss, and I wouldn't say I'm a representative of the community, but I'm somebody who likes to bring up the concerns that they have and try to get to the bottom of them, or at least have a responsible discourse about it.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, Matt, listening to your schedule, that sounds. Blake probably says like, yeah, I could totally do that. Not to belittle what you do, but Blake's our social butterfly of the group. Jason also very social. Like he was Jason or Blake were definitely the ones to send to New Jersey. I listen to that and I want to go take a nap right now. Like I'm such an introvert. Like I'll socialize. Like I like meeting new people and stuff like that. But if you're listening and you came up to me and I did not give you what you were giving me in Vegas, I apologize, because I know that definitely happened. And whether it's because we were hiking until 4 a.m. the night we arrived.
Well, that's a bad move.
That was a mistake. That was a bad mistake.
I will say this, that there is definitely periods of time where all I want to do, and again, I understand that when I'm traveling somewhere and there's a lot of people coming together, it's a very good opportunity, and it's a fleeting opportunity for you to go ahead and hang out with people that you otherwise are not going to see very often. But I'm telling you, man, like in Ohio, I was there the Thursday. We hung out with people the Thursday, the Friday, the Saturday, but the Sunday, like they're like, okay, so what are we doing tonight? And it's like at a certain point, you just gotta unplug. And I said, my move right now is to get a nice ass groove on this couch in my Airbnb, jam some Netflix, and maybe watch like 4 Rambo movies. Like that's what I want. I just want to see Sylvester Stallone rip a guy's heart out. Like that's my move. And it's exhausting. It is exhausting. But I one thing that I want people to always, whenever they think of me, I want them to think that I'm genuine. That who who I am when they meet me, who they see on video or casting. That's who I am, and that is the god awful truth about it. Is that I've learned a long time ago that it's just so much easier to just be yourself. It's just so much easier. You can put on a facade, but man, it's hard to keep up. That web of lies or those kinds of, building yourself up to be something else. But man, so that's it. That's all it is.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I would push myself through my lack of wanting to socially engage with people to sit and have a beer with you at the next event, Matt. You seem like a genuine guy, and I'd like to grab a beer with you.
I'm down. I'm absolutely down.
I'm curious. I think we kind of are coming to the end, but before we go, I am curious because I think a lot of people do know Flake, caster, and the social media personality and what you bring to the game from that sense. I'm curious about Flake, the Flesh and Blood player, because you obviously know the game. One of the things that I really appreciate is early on, it's hard to get an understanding of like what anybody knew about the game. So they would put people with good personalities in front of the camera, and the game is new. It's very complicated. We're adding stuff to it all the time. One of the things that I've actually been very impressed with is recently there's been kind of an influx of the casters going and doing well at events, and whether it's been pro quests and things, a couple gold foils have been won by people. And I take a lot of pride in having people who want to cast our game know about it, because nothing drives me more crazy than in like professional sports when you have a guy who didn't play trying to analyze something. You're like, this guy got cut from his middle school basketball team. Why is he telling me about the plays that Greg Popovich is drawing up on the board before the Spurs? He has no right to criticize Greg Popovich. And I think that early on, it's like, okay, I mean, I hope these guys love the game, but recently we've seen a lot of that. So I want to know, what have you played, or what are your favorite decks to play, and what are you looking forward to, or what do you think is going to be good in this coming meta? Like, what are you going to play in the Uprising meta?
I'm like you, man. Like I'd say, tell me more about how Steve Kerr should use Steph Curry. Please tell me more about it. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, get the Cheeto dust off your stomach. No problem. Like it's like there's that meme of like the dude in like a wife beater in his boxers, like with a pizza on his stomach, like watching the Olympics, and somebody like trips and falls, and he's like, pathetic. Like, it's just like one of those.
Exactly.
That's what it's like.
Joe Buck, piece of shit.
I do want to just sort of go in and say that I have always felt that it is my responsibility to not only the broadcast, but to the people viewing, that I could be the best possible player that I can possibly be. And for that exact reason is because I want to say I've been there, I've done that. I know this scenario. So that's jamming games, that's getting reps. And it was the same thing when I was casting Gwent, where if there was a tournament coming up, I was on the leaderboard. It was just the fact of the matter. I played as many games as the pros did. I never did as well, obviously, because I'm not a pro. But, certain tournaments, I'm like, oh, well, I'm top 100 in the world. Like, and I'm casting this game. And when people would be in Twitch chat and criticizing what I'm saying, or like, oh, what a stupid thing to say. Like, why would he say this? Or why would he make this play? And then it happens. Like, the pros are making the plays. Like, that's vindication. But it's also just a responsibility to the people who are hiring me to make sure that the broadcast is as complete as possible. So that, from my regard, is not just knowing the titles of cards based off of the artwork. It's understanding how they're interacting in a unique scenario, which is there. And that's why I play the game, and that's why I love the game. And I am lucky enough that I test and play with national champions and calling winners. So I get my ass whooped regularly, but it has absolutely shaped me to be a player who, has a gold foil and has, I had 3 top 8s out of 5 pro quests that I've ever played in. So like these are elements to me, and a lot of other players, people like Tan and Grace win tournaments as well. Brian Gottlieb and they're players who give a rat's ass about the success of the game and the broadcast. Therefore, it is their responsibility as well, and they feel it too. But me personally, I always tell people, I'm like, if I'm not on top of my game, how the hell am I supposed to properly convey this unique situation to you? Otherwise, it's just literally, and this is not meant to be criticism to other people who want to cast, because it's not easy to cast. And I always tell people that the best way to get a job like myself is to go out and do it. And that's how I started. I started by making my own tournament and casting my own tournament. And that's how CDPR caught wind of me and hired me. That was it. It's not easy. But if it's just about naming the card and what's happening, anybody can do that. But understanding the complexity and the impact of and the intricacy of why a certain thing is being done, that's a different story. Why is he arshaling it? Or this card versus that card? Anyways, that's all part of it. So sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tangent there, but it's something that I'm very passionate about and I'm adamant about, is that I don't want anyone to ever say that I am not trying my damn best at being good at the game, and I think I'm pretty good at the game. I'm definitely not anywhere close to those pro players, but damn man, I had a PTI. I didn't use it because I was casting the event, right? So like I could have been there. I wouldn't have won. I probably would have done well. But damn it, like that's part of the process is the hard work. But how do I feel the meta is going to shape up with all these new heroes? I think that I as a ninja fan, I feel like Katsu is just sort of, until they create like an elemental Katsu or something like that, like it's kind of lost. I'm a firm believer that I think gone are the days of talentless classes. Like, like there's going to be no more, everything is going to have a little attachment to it. I think Dromai is not good enough to be CC, to be a CC hero. I think Phi is good enough, but not quite there yet. And I believe that Icelander is really freaking cool and might catch some people in Blitz, but there's not enough firepower for Icelander to do anything other than maybe fatigue players. I really truly believe that. But don't get me wrong, I love Icelander, and I'm probably going to put some work in to at least make it look like she's got a chance.
That's exactly where we are. Is it like to liken her to a deck that was pretty prevalent, still kind of is, I guess, in DBS. There's a deck called Invoker that when it released was okay, but as sets came and gave it like a tool, a card that like really leaned into its play style, that deck just continued to improve. And I think that Icelander just reeks of getting one or two more tools that let her threaten more. Because I think that she's got control. She's got a lot, but like,
yeah,
there's nothing that really, it's right now in its current iteration feels extremely unforgiving. Like if you misplay or if you don't sequence properly or you miss a window to ice them out at a certain point, like you just lose. And it's not, you can even be playing tight and still lose. Like she just doesn't have like that. So that's exactly what we found as well. But I'm excited to see what happens with the next couple sets.
Yeah. I find that the hardest thing about Icelander is like she's the hardest parts of two different archetypes. Like the hardest part of Wizard is knowing when your correct windows are and how to punish your opponent properly, and guessing when you think, or if you go here, okay, I'll attack and I'll bring the heat, and then they go, oh, I just so happen to have two blues. You're like, oh, there it went. My entire game plan has been dismantled by the fact that you happened upon two of your like 9 blues in one hand at the wrong time for me. And then she's like the control part of Oldham, but she doesn't have that fatigue cycle of like Crown of Seeds and those kind of things. So like she takes the hardest parts of two decks and puts them together in one deck.
Yep.
And just, oh man, I don't know. I love to play Wizard. Like I play Kano basically exclusively, and Icelander very much concerns me because I'm like, okay, I can make them not do anything for a long time, but in Flesh and Blood you have to kill each other. Like that's part of the game, is you have to kill the other guy, you know.
The problem I feel with her is that you don't need AB 3 or 4 like you would against Kano. You need AB 2.
Yeah.
And you'll get by. And that opens up slots where your opponent's main utility pieces of equipment will help their game plan. Whereas Kano is like, shoot, I got to deal with Kano, which means I got to probably get rid of, like, I can't use maybe I can't use this. I could still probably run a Tunic, maybe, but will I get there because I'm against like a clock as well? So the opponent's going to have to make decisions and sacrifice game plan and crucial pieces of equipment that help their game plan. Whereas Icelander, AB2 is enough. It's absolutely enough. And so how do you win? And in Limited, I was so enamored with her. I top forward at Harry Tarantula with Icelander through drafts and felt like a god. And the problem was literally the second you lose an arsenal, you are absolutely gooned. And that's all. That's part of it. Yeah. And what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I'm super intrigued by Dromai just in the sense that she feels like the deck that everybody just goes, is she ever going to be good enough? Then they're there's always some maniac in the lab building something spicy. And I think that that's the thing that Flesh and Blood I'm waiting for in this game that so many card games have is we've seen innovation, but typically it's innovation from a very solid starting point. Like you don't like you see, for example, I loved Tyler Horspool winning Vegas last year. I thought that his innovation of Prism to play it as like a fatigue control style deck was great. 60 to 70% of the cards were still effectively identical to what Prism was running beforehand.
Yeah.
He just optimized the end of the list to adjust for a thing. And so far, like Flesh and Blood hasn't had that mad lad who shows up with a deck where people go, what is this deck even doing? Like,
Right.
you know, I like Sasha. Sasha is, you know, well known for being kind of that mad lad in New Zealand where
He kind of
like,
did that in
to an event.
Australia. He did an attack-based wizard and top 8'd,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
attack based Kano and like top 8'd a calling, and it's like that's cool, but that was like in the early life of the game.
Yeah.
But the hero pool was very small. You could get a better sense. Like now, is there something out there? Like, right, the card pool keeps getting wider and deeper. At what point does some maniac go, I have spent the last 3 months by myself in a basement, not showering and eating Cheetos and Pepsi that I've had Uber Eats to my house.
Yes.
Create this deck.
Talishar Azalea.
Everybody.
Yeah, that is absolutely the right recipe if you want to go ahead and create some stuff. You have to have the, you know, that orange powder just on your fingers while you're, you know, picking up a Kraken's Aether Vein and looking at it and showing, what are you hiding from me? You know?
Yeah.
The problem is that anytime that there's a new hero with a new talent, your pool is going to be exceptionally smaller. Part of the reason why Starvo was so big was because it had access to more cards than anyone else.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is that it had a bigger pool, more variables that you can combine to create the chaotic deck that really terrorized everybody for a few months there. Now, maybe the supplemental set will give Dromai a new dragon that's like, this is a win condition. This
or
is
a dragon
absolutely
tutor, an attack that tutors the dragon of choice. It's like, cool, grabbing Thamai. Icelander's not doing
Absolutely.
shit on her own turn, you know, something like that. Yeah.
There you go.
That's what I'm excited for, is like seeing these current heroes that are coming out now being fleshed out in the rest of this set cycle, so to speak,
Yeah.
right?
That's
So
new talents and new heroes and such I don't think will ever really be a big impact if they're creating a new hero pool to a degree. I mean, I that's just, it's a silly assumption that I'm making here, but you know, Fi is just, the pool for Fi is just, it's all go against, it's all gas, it's and it's recurring threats that you can pull out of the graveyard over and over and over again. And I feel like the next thing that this game needs is some sort of graveyard hate for your opponent, you know? Like, I think that would be something that would be like something like Invert Existence already exists, but you know, a generic attack that if this hits, banish a card from your opponent's graveyard. I feel like that could be something that's coming.
I find it interesting because the design philosophy so far in Fab has been to be very careful about anything that can undermine the mechanics of another hero, which I like. I like that decks aren't like instantly hated out because a deck shows up, right? Like up until Everfest released, Rhinar was the only deck that had access to a way to deal with Azalea's items. That was it. He was the only one. And then finally they went, okay, you know what? Let's give everybody access to a card. Even in making that card, they were careful because the Wizards won't run it. You're not going to run it in Dorinthia and weapon-based decks because you don't attack them with physical attacks, so you can't buff an attack and hit them. So they were still hesitant to ever give like full-on hate to any sort of aspect of the game, which has been to me, a wise design style, because now they go, okay, we're gonna put it out there, but it's still in a limited quantity. And if it's good and it seems important, maybe we make a weapon version of that card that other people can have access to. But they've been hesitant to do those things, and I like that design philosophy of not just going screw it. But it's interesting because to your point, when a new hero comes in, their pool being small seems super relevant, because the only time it's ever been a problem is when the heroes have too much access to good generic cards, like Starvo having all of the elemental cards, not necessarily generics, but all of the elements, And then Briar's big issue was she came in and immediately was like, well, I'm not restricted to elementals. So I use Nimblism because it's good. I use Snatch because it's good. And it becomes good card.deck. Whereas like Fi and Icelander are coming in with very small pools. And it's effectively like a game like Magic. If they were like, we're going to make purple, that's only going to be in this set. It would be like, okay, well, my entire card pool comes from this set and generic cards that exist beforehand that I can get access to. Like you really kind of like bottleneck the power level of those decks.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I want to just step in before we get too far. Matt, I know you are, like you've stated, very busy. You're bouncing around. You already done 2 podcasts today. We're coming up on an hour 15. So I'm giving the release valve here to you and let you pull, shoot, and jump. But yeah, I mean, before we go, if there is more that we want to hit on and you're willing to stay, by all means. But just want to
I got another 5 minets or so. I do have to eventually. I mean, it's almost it's almost 11 o'clock here, but it's been a long day. I haven't really eaten, but we'll get there. It's been a busy day, but we're good. Coffee is the elixir for the soul for me here. So.
Caffeine and hate, man. That's just how you need to fuel your life. That's what I ran on in the Army, was caffeine and hate. Now it's caffeine and card games. So
there you go. You got to fill that void, I suppose. but yeah, no, honestly, I've enjoyed the conversations. I do appreciate you guys having me on for sure.
So before we let you go, then, all we ask is that you give your plugs. What do you got coming up? I mean, any spicy podcast topics that you're going to be hitting? Like, definitely, if you haven't, people listening, go and check out the Instant Speed podcast. It's on YouTube. What platforms are you? Just your RSS feed is across the board, basically.
It's like, as far as I know, I don't handle that stuff. I'm not like a technological guy at all when it comes to stuff. I gave that. It's weird, man. Like, there's someday at one point you wake up and somebody mentions something, you're like, I have no idea what that is, and I'm too old to learn about it, so forget it. Like, we're done. That's it. Like, we are done. This is what I know is now here. So. This computer, this screen, this microphone, this phone. I'm done. Yeah,
I just talk pretty. I just talk pretty and push buttons, and like you guys handle everything else.
I am completely okay with somebody else handling this. But we are on YouTube at youtube.com/983media. 983media is essentially like the media house that handles my content, and they have content from a whole other bunch of other people there. Spotify, Apple Pod, all that other stuff, Google Podcasts, all that other nonsense. Instant Speed Podcast is the best way to check it out. I'm on Twitter at WatchFlake and at Instant Speed Pod. So both of those Twitters as well. Please check it out. But again, there are so many other amazing people out there. It's not a competition in my eyes. Everybody's out there trying to promote stuff that they love. So
you're a nice guy, Matt. You're a great guy. We're interviewing you right now, so we want your information. We don't give a shit about other people. So.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to it's hard to reconcile. Sometimes.
Easy, James. Quit plugging everyone else. This is about Matt right now.
Somebody has had to like kind of sit me down. I think it might have been Logan Peterson. He's like he had to like basically just like stop me, look at me in the eyes, and said, just understand that you're like your card game famous. I'm like, I'm not famous. He's like, people in this game know who you are. You have to reconcile with that. Like, you have to understand that that's a thing. And it's just like, I'm just like everybody else. I'm like, I want to play the tournaments. I want to sit back and watch games. Like, that's something that was hard for me, especially in New Jersey, which was, I was like locked behind the curtain casting these matches. And every second that I had, I was out there trying to watch games, and people were like, oh my God, Flake's watching your game. I'm like, dude, I'm just watching a game. Like, I will please continue playing. Please continue playing, because I cannot play. So you play and I will watch. But yeah, I do appreciate you guys so much. And thanks for having me on, because honestly, it's good to have these things out here. Like, the more content, the better is what I say.
Absolutely. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out Matt and his channels, and we will talk to y'all next week. Peace.